research on transnational family practices and care, the transnational social reproductive worlds of migrants, migration, gender, and migrant integration. More recently, she has examined the care and social reproduction in displaced Ukrainian families and explored the role of intangible cultural heritage in incorporation processes during displacement. She has academic research experience and has also conducted applied research for non-governmental organizations, public institutions, and national and international organizations. So today, Martina will present her work titled Agency and Reflexivity in Shaping Individual Life Paths, two empirical examples from Slovakia using longitudinal approaches. Thank you once again, Martina, accepting for our offer to present your work, and the floor is yours.
Okay, so give me a sec. I will share my presentation first.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, is it working? Do you see my presentation?
We will see in a sec. Yes.
Yes.
It works very well.
Okay. So thank you. I'm really happy to be here today with you and to share with you my work. Really, at the beginning, I would like to thank for Smilka to very nice introduction to longitudinal approaches and life course perspectives. And also, I want to really at the beginning admit that I'm not the expert in the area. I would like to use this opportunity of these webinars to share also my current and maybe some recent work that somehow used at least partly these longitudinal approaches. So today I would like to just have a quick reflection, methodological reflection on the longitudinal approaches. And then I will present you two examples from Slovakia. One is from my earlier research, and I will talk about it only very briefly. And the second one is the work I am conducting nowadays. So is the presentation moving? Do you see second slide?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So how I met or why I considered longitudinal approaches, it was the situation at the field that I posed the question how to capture and understand change over the time, and also how to observe individuals and groups, social phenomena evolving. Also, I was interested how changing the social processes in longer term affect individual life stories of the migrants, and also somehow grasp continuity and transformation of the people's lives. So that's why I try to include especially the aspect of the life course into the research. Regarding this literature inspiration, so it was for me really important to track changes over the time that will allow me identify patterns and sequences in social behavior and experiences. Also, it is really important to capture contextual and temporal dynamics. Also, for me, it was quite important to look to what extent my data are valid and cross-check data over the time, and also to understand a little bit deeper processes that are behind social phenomena. To be more concrete, I would like to introduce you work on the Slovak care workers working in Austria, just to give you kind of the brief overview. It was in the past really important phenomenon when like thousands of Slovak women traveled to Austria to provide paid care to older adults in the private households. It was at its peak like 40,000 of Slovak women. It was a significant proportion of those who work abroad, and there was big care deficit emerging because of this migration. And I have been focusing on this phenomena for more like 15 years. in order to really see this development over the time and the effects of this female migration on their families in Slovakia, in the countries of origin, we decide in cooperation with sociologist Miloslav Bahna to incorporate aspects of the longitudinality in our research. And we conducted a mixed method approach that consisted of sociological quantitative survey and qualitative research. This quantitative survey, it was conducted in 2 waves in 2011 and 2016. Although it was not designed as a representative, in final, it fits to this criteria of representativeness. And we looked there very broadly on the overall socio-demographical structure of the care workers, their work experiences, jobs placement, mediation, but also the effects of care migration on their lives, reflection on their gender identity, and also their satisfaction with the work, and also the caring needs in the transnational families, because they really maintain strong transnational ties and still remain the main caregivers while being at work, because they commute on the two weekly working rotas, what means that they spend 2 weeks at work and then they return home for another 2 weeks. And this 2016 wave included also those inactive, because we wanted to somehow trace to what extent this experience with the paid domestic care influenced life project further, to what extent they are able to somehow tie on this experience, whether it was beneficial, whether they find jobs in the social care, on the healthcare sector, or whether it is so-called dead-end job, as it is very often labeled in the sociological literature. And this qualitative research involves at first wave 17 care workers, and at 2017, 9 of them were re-interviewed and 3 new interview partners were included. And this semi-structured scenario was very complementary to sociological quantitative survey. So we wanted to find the responses about the structure, socio-demography, but the most important was to see, because there was the big changes in this legislative framework of this job in Austria. It was for a long time unregularized, but since 2008, it started to be legalized on the basis of the trade license. So we wanted to see the effects of this legislative change on the trajectories of care workers, and also how the long-term experience with transnational care provision affects the life project and the families in the countries of origin. It's just the very brief, interesting results which I would like to share is that we really found robust and interesting information about the age structure, that it's mainly the women around the 50s. Also that, of course, earnings are increasing. Also the years spent as a caregiver, because this mobility pattern is really satisfactory for many. Just 2 weeks at work enable reconciliation between work and family life. But what is really interesting there is that only around 5% of these female reported that they have like intensive family care needs at home. It means it also somehow supported my later work, where I developed an argument with colleague from the Romania, Madalina Rogos, that due to strong gender norms, female go abroad to provide fair care only at the situation when there are any care needs, and when the care needs emerge, they just quit their jobs. And it was also confirmed by our approach. And also very important here that this research enabled us to somehow predict or anticipate the development of the situation, because here when you see the region of permanent residence, while at the beginning in the 90s, women mainly from Western Slovakia traveled to Austria, and it was kind of the strategy to improve the wealth, to gain new skills, to learn the language, to simply find employment abroad. After the fall of the Iron Curtain, nowadays it's more like the economic strategy. Eastern Slovakia belongs to those poorest with the fewest employment opportunities. So nowadays only those women who cannot find other work travel to the Austria, and there is the huge drop in the total number of the Slovak.
Słucham tylko, więc.
Okay, so now the numbers really drop, and there are only about 10,000 of Slovak caregivers working in Austria, and it is going to continue. So we really, this approach enabled us even yeah, and also I would like to add to this qualitative research that there was the biggest emphasis on the life course perspective, which in case of my research referred to events, experiences that occur in the biographies of individuals and may have lasting consequences on their lives and future life trajectories. Re-interviewing after 6 years helped me, for instance, understand to gender equality, remittances, some females divorced, for instance, but in other case, they build their careers based on the previous experiences. For instance, they established own agencies in Slovakia. So I consider it really, really beneficial to understand deeper how this overall phenomena affects the life stories. So this is one example, and now I would like to tell you a little bit more on my current work, which focuses on the care and social reproduction in the families of Ukrainian refugees. My main objective is to explore diverse forms and strategies related to care and social reproduction among refugees who fled to Slovakia because of the war in 2022. And also another important focus is what role in these processes also play cultural practices, intangible cultural heritage, and what role does this cultural practices play in integration processes. It is the mainly women with children in Slovakia. This group comprises 83% of total persons with temporary resident status, and these Ukrainian women ensure social reproduction, negotiate their everyday lives vis-a-vis welfare states, regulation, institutional practices, and various social organizations and communities. But what is important here is that these policy measures have evolving character. Also, the humanitarian crisis evolves. So that is why I prepared my methodology that will include re-interviewing, which I consider as one of the aspects of the longitudinal approach. In total, I included in my sample 21 women with caring responsibilities, and out of them, 10 were re-interviewed after the 9 months. The fieldwork is in Bratislava. Interview lasted between 1 and 3 hours. Recordings were transcribed, of course, and anonymized. And I used in vivo 14 deductive coding and thematic analysis. I'm still somewhere in the middle, so what I will talk about will be more like the preliminary findings. What was really important from the methodological perspective is that semi-structured questionnaires were designed to allow to identify agency and narrative of the LIFE project. Also, it was really important to me to somehow be able to identify the habitus of the family before the flights and after coming to Slovakia, to differentiate about changes in social reproduction. And also, as I'm focusing also on this cultural aspect on the integration, to be able to identify V&S perspective proposed by the Erickson, and to be able to differentiate the position of the Ukrainians in the narrative when they want to be perceived as a cultural community. Experienced researchers in refugee research conducted research in cooperation with interpreter, and also I found the interview partners through the gatekeeper. Very important for me in this research is research ethics, because the vulnerability of the research sample, also I try to apply as much as possible the dual imperative, which drew attention to ethical action and application of the approaches to aimed at improvement of the lives of refugees and forced migrants. And also I try to apply a trauma-informed approach to qualitative research. And for this purpose, I attended both a seminar and educational workshop for researchers how to do research with traumatized research partners. Interview partners received, of course, written informed consent, both in Ukrainian and Slovaks. There were 3 rounds of assuring interview partners about the principles of the research interview, to be sure that they really understood that they are those who can always decide. Also, they received small remuneration, €10 for the of food voucher, and also I try to be as reflexive and take into the account possibility, take into the account the reflexivity and positionality of me as a researcher, as an outsider. Regarding the theoretical perspective and context, I don't want to go into deeper details, but the key theoretical framework for me is a social reproduction and care. Then transnationalism, I view these families as transnational families, but also I consider a concept of temporality and liminality and integration. So regarding the preliminary findings, how I see the situation is that as it is the predominantly women with children, so it shows the gender nature of the social reproduction. Ukrainian women are now primarily responsible for the care and social reproduction, and such a crisis exacerbates existing inequalities and highlights this proportionate burden placed on women in the reproduction. And these caring responsibilities put enormous pressure on these women and push them into vulnerable situation and further complicating their integration and stability. What the material shows that, for instance, children very often are pressured to become more independent, spend much time alone. For instance, they travel long distance to schools alone. Also, various informal groups were formed in order to support missing care, and Ukrainians really mobilized also within the community, because still there are not available childcare services for them. What is also really important is that Ukrainian women intensively engage in humanitarian activities, volunteering, and try to support the reproduction of the community, not only in Slovakia, but also in the Ukraine. And moreover, Ukrainian refugees also involved in the social reproduction of the receiving society by engaging in paid care, paid domestic work, or childcare. Also, what is quite frequent in my narratives in relation to the care needs in the Ukraine still is big challenge how to provide care for older adults who remain in the Ukraine. And some of my interview partners have been considering return in order to do so. So the social reproduction occurs transnationally and really involves various forms, and it circulates in both directions. For instance, there are cases or examples in my sample where in case of the women with children with disabilities, so the families from Ukraine send money to those women to help them survive, as these overall supporting schemes in Slovakia are not satisfactory in some cases. Financial limitations restrict these women ability to purchase care, so it leads heavier pressure on this informal and community networks. But what is really important is that it affects their possibilities for economic participation, and then have further negative effects on their social mobility. Also, what is really important is this strong feeling of the temporality. The situation is for many still perceived as a liminal stage with a blurred vision of the near future. What is reflected, for instance, in decision regarding children, education, purchases of the real estates, or even investing in the improvement of the household. In case of Slovakia, there is not obligatory education, not compulsory enrollment into primary education for Ukrainian children. It means that many Ukrainian children study both online in the Ukraine and also in Slovakia, what is also really pressing, put them into the difficult situation. Also, have also this discretionary nature of government decision in Slovakia. For instance, Slovakia decided about the prolongation of this temporary refugee status only 2 weeks before terminated in March the original regulation on the EU level, or selected supportive schemes are being prolonged only in 2 or 3 monthly periods. So the refugees are still unsecure how long the support will end. I would like to also add a couple of words regarding this cultural aspect. This living heritage or cultural intangible heritage is really important component of the social reproduction, because it helped them to reconstruct their lives, identity. These processes are visible on the individual level within the families, but also in context of the broader community of Ukrainians and in the society. What I mean here is like different events that include aspects of the Ukrainian culture. It is really different grassroots activities shared within the communities. And also it relates also the practices that somehow build the bridge between the majority society and Ukrainians, and to strengthen social cohesion and the acceptance. For instance, the language plays a really important role. Ukrainians from Russian speaking part of the Ukraine, they commonly refuse to speaking Russian, and they try to speak only in the Ukrainian, and similar acts are becoming a powerful expression of the identity, patriotism, and resistance against the expression. This oral traditions and language is really important also in the everyday life. Among my interview partners was described a huge need to read in Ukrainian, to listen to Ukrainian music, to engage in the Ukrainian activities, and was really important that there were lots of activities available and infrastructural support for doing these activities. And of course, it is really important component for building identity in the integration processes.
Martina,
I'm running out of time.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
so sorry to interrupt, but yeah. Thank you so much. Maybe last part we can elaborate a bit more with the discussion and question parts. And thank